We have some more breaking news. Meta out with its earnings report. Dan Howley has that for us. Dan.
That's right. We have a slight miss here by Meta. They came in with revenue of $28.8 billion. That's versus $28.9 billion, which was expected. And they saw earnings per share of $2.46. That's versus expectations of $2.54. Now, what's interesting is despite prior expectations, Facebook actually added more users than expected, daily active users to the platform. They came in with 1.97 billion versus 1.94 billion. But the big problem here, and the reason why you're seeing it down more than 4%, is because they whiffed on the Q3 revenue forecast. They're expecting between $26 billion and $28.6 billion in revenue for the quarter. Wall Street, though, was looking for $30.32 billion, so nowhere near the range that Meta had put forward. This also, by the way, comes just after the FTC announced that they're seeking an injunction against Facebook's acquisition of the company Within. They make a virtual reality fitness app called Supernatural. They're basically saying that Facebook is trying to purchase rather than innovate its way into the VR space. And again, this comes against the larger backdrop of Facebook trying to get into the metaverse and VR as it tries to right the ship with its advertising revenue.
All right, Dan, thanks so much again. The stock off after hours following that weaker than expected guidance coming for third quarter revenue. For the latest quarter, second quarter revenue coming in at $28.82 billion. The estimate was for $28.93 billion. Facebook daily active users, like Dan was just saying, actually beat 1.97 billion. We were expecting a slight drop to 1.95 billion. Monthly active users, though, for Facebook, 2.93 billion. The estimate was for 2.95 billion. So a bit light there. And Rochelle, we're also getting some news about the CFO transition and chief strategy officer appointment there. Mark Zuckerberg naming two key roles in this report. We know that this is something that the street had been expecting for quite some time. Susan Lee has now been promoted and will serve as Meta's chief financial officer. David Wenner will now take over the new role as Meta's first chief strategy officer.
I mean, obviously Meta has a lot going on right now. I mean, when you look at where the shares are, they've lost about half their value since the beginning of the year. A lot of investors worrying not just about the health of the core business when you look at some of these other up-and-coming companies, when you look at the rise of TikTok, when you look at the rise of some of these other companies, but also what we're seeing with ad spending also taking a bite. We reported earlier this year about, for the first time, Facebook Meta losing on its ad business side, a lot of investors pulling out of that side. So a lot of this not adding up to much for Meta. And then when you think of this big, huge Met, right there in the name, Meta, betting on the metaverse, something we've still yet to see materialize. It's understandable that we're seeing Meta struggle right now. As you mentioned, look at Meta shares in after hours, losing about 4% there, Dave.
I expected a lot worse. I mean, Sean and I were talking about a dumpster fire here this morning. I thought it would be an absolute disaster for Meta. This is not great. This is not as bad as many thought it would be, in particular that daily active user number. A real surprise given their lack of relevance today. They are hanging on by a thread because, of course, of Instagram keeping them in the game. But look, this is a weird time. You could call it an existential crisis for Meta, really, in terms of, yes, you talk about the metaverse. We're a decade away from realizing any profits from that whatsoever. I think it's still a good bet Mark Zuckerberg is making, but it's hard to visualize. It's so far down the road. In the meantime, it's going to be emulating TikTok, something we'll talk about later on in the program, that they are getting heavily criticized for the most influential people on that platform. But talk about some of the things Mark Zuckerberg said last time they reported, that this is a downturn unlike he's seen in recent history. And a lot of people, there's a bunch of people at this company that don't belong here. So expect some major layoffs coming down the road. Let's get back to Dan Howley, our tech reporter. Dan, anything really jump out as a big surprise to you from this earnings report?
Yeah, I really do think it has to do with the Facebook daily active users. That was something that we've been watching. They had seen their first decline ever a few quarters back, and that was a big blow to Facebook, the actual Facebook app itself. And now you notice that Facebook has been, Meta rather, has been moving more of the emphasis to Instagram. And, we'll discuss, as you said, those kind of the blowback that it's seeing as a result of not really putting itself forward as a photo sharing app, really moving towards the ability to share videos similar to what we're seeing with TikTok. But I think that number on Facebook is really interesting just to see that continue to grow, though obviously it's not by leaps and bounds that it used to be.
And we really want to hear more later on, Dan, about have they figured out those privacy changes from Apple? Still not entirely clear if they've figured out how to navigate those changes in terms of the ad buy.